Trying to live on the fence, it's never safe. There will come a time when we have to choose sides. Welcome to the Word for 2021. Today we're in 1 Samuel chapter 29. In the midst of despair, David flees and he runs to the enemy territory. He doesn't ask for God's direction. He leans upon his own understanding, and he even convinces himself that the enemy of his enemy is his friend. David and 600 of his men take their families and they leave God's hand of protection so they might make it on their own there in Philistine areas. David persuades Achish, the Philistine king, to allow him to settle in Ziklag. From there, David raids enemy villages, but he tells Achish that he's actually raiding Israelite villages. Now, to cover his sin, to cover his deception, he leaves no survivors. He gives plunder to Achish, but then he also gives plunder to the Israelites. David is kind of like Robin Hood. He's trying to play both sides. He's actually playing a very dangerous game. He's wanting to stay in the middle undetected. He's saying one thing, but he's doing another. David seems to be getting away with it until Achish says to David and his men that he wants them to come and join him as they go and fight against Israel. Now David is in a tough spot. Will he be a traitor and fight with the Philistines, or will he be found out as a liar? David is caught in the middle. In order not to be found out, he agrees to fight with the enemy. Have you ever found yourself involved in doing something that you know was obviously wrong? Or even you're being pressured to do something that you really know that you should not be doing? You're at a crossroads. The question is, will you go along to get along, or will you risk rejection and take a stand for what you know is right? May I encourage you, God will always honor us when we stand for the truth, even when there is a great cost. He wants us to be people of honesty and integrity. Going back to our chapter, David, when he went over to the Philistines, it seemed like a very smart move in the beginning. But now, again, David is caught in the middle. As David and his men are gathering with the Philistines, the leaders of the Philistine army, they go to Achish and they say, "We don't want David to be with us. We don't trust him." Then Kish reluctantly sends David and his men away. I love what devotional writer Wendy Blight said about this situation. She wrote, "After studying this passage, I see the Philistines' verbal rejection of David as God's supernatural protection of David. Although we don't see God's name mentioned in the ink on the page, we know that God's sovereign hand is working and moving behind the scenes to spare David from engaging in this battle and jeopardizing his rightful position as Israel's king." She went on to talk about the fact that she had written a devotional book, but her first book was rejected. And then her pastor encouraged her by saying, "Wendy, man's rejection is God's protection." Looking back over my life, I can see how God has protected me from pitfalls that I wasn't aware of. He intervened by either closing a door or opening a door. I'm so thankful for His grace and His protection, even in those times when I wasn't even aware of it. Here, David was given a way of escape by God. David was saved from a very tough spot, but as we'll see tomorrow in chapter 30, David will come to regret not seeking God's direction before he ran there to the enemy's territory. Thank you for joining the Word for 2021.